Bill is known for evoking tears and smiles, and tonight I think he's mostly involved in smiles because he's going to tell us how to catch a Billadad. Those of you who are not in the know will be glad to hear Bill tell about this. Could you give a nice warm welcome to Bill?
East of New Hampshire and west of Maine is a strip of wilderness that is the most dangerous place in all of North America, if not all the entire world, because it is the home of the Billadad. Now this is the northern Billadad, and not to be confused with the southern Crawladad, which is only dangerous when there's too much hot pepper in the gumbo. The Billadad is a creature shaped somewhat like a beaver. Only on its head it's got a beak like a snapping turtle with teeth in it like a cougar. Its front limbs have claws like a lion. On its back it's got wings like a bat. Its rear legs are just like a kangaroo. But it's got a beaver tail, except on the end, where there's a stinger, like a scorpion. And you ask, well, how do I know? Because I'm the only person in the whole world that's actually ever successfully hunted a Billadad. And it happened like this. As some of you can tell, I'm not from Maine. When I moved to Maine from New Jersey, I thought I needed to do something to fit in. So I hired a registered Maine guide to take me out into the woods and teach me what I needed to know. The first day he took me fishing. And yes, we caught some trout about this big. And I had to say to him, "Sir, I've seen bigger carp floating dead in the Passaic River than those trout." Well, he gave me a dirty look and he said, "Yeah, come back tomorrow. I'll take you hunting." We hunted all day through the woods and fields of Maine. And at the end of that day, I had to say, "Sir, I've seen bigger, more dangerous rats on the streets of Newark than I saw any game animals in the woods of Maine." Well, he threw his registered Maine guide hat down and stamped on it and said, "Get out of here. You think you're so smart? You need to go hire an unregistered Maine guide." And so I did. I found Willie Find It, an unregistered Maine guide. I was to meet him at 4 o'clock in the morning at a Dunkin' Donuts in Cornish, Maine, where I found out I had to buy him an unregistered Maine guide breakfast. A dozen molasses donuts and a quart of Moxie. We went out and got into his truck, and I realized why we met at 4 o'clock in the morning. Because as an unregistered Maine guide, he had an unregistered Maine truck, and we needed to drive in the dark before the police saw him. And we drove off the blacktop on the dirt logging roads until we came to the end of the road. Willie opened his door, got out, got his claw hammer, went over and opened my door, and pointed through the woods and said, "See that pond? That's where you'll find the Billadad." Now let me explain what a Billadad does. See, it has those kangaroo legs I told you about. Well, it gets down like this and sits at the end of the pond. And when a trout comes up, it jumps across, spreads those bat wings, grabs the trout with its claws, stuffs it into his beak, and chews it up with those fangs. Now, the big thing about a Billadad is it never stops growing. So pretty soon, that little Billadad is jumping across, and catching beavers and otters. And then, after a while, when a deer comes down to drink. And finally, when you get the really vicious, dangerous billadads, they sit there and wait for a moose. And it's crunch, 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 antlers and all. No more moose. Well, Willie Find It, the unregistered Maine guide, said, okay, I'm going to give you a billadad gun. And he did. A double-barreled one. It looks sort of like a double-barreled bazooka. And he said, whatever you do, only pull the first trigger because you want to keep the second barrel in reserve in case you miss and the billadad charges. Then he jumped into his truck and he drove off. Well, of course, as I walked through the brush, I wasn't scared at all. And I heard a noise, and I was aiming right at that billadad wherever it was, and suddenly it jumped up, and I went, come on, go! I pulled both triggers. 5 minutes later, when I woke up, I was leaning against a tree. My head hurt, my shoulder hurt, and my eyes were spinning, and I heard Willie's truck come driving back down the road. It stopped. Willie got out, went around to the other side with the claw hammer, and opened the door for his assistant, and said, go down and get the billadad. Well, his assistant went down to the edge of the pond, looked around, and picked up what looked like a strip of jerky. I guess I got that billadad with both barrels. And he looked at it, and he smacked his lips and said, lunch, and gobbled it down. I'm sure he thought it was going to be much better than the baked bean sandwich he had brought along with him. He had hardly finished chewing when all of a sudden he went like, oh, and he ran over to the edge of the pond and he bent over and went, oh! And then the noise stopped. And he just stayed there like this. You see, billadad is not only dangerous because it can kill you and eat you, it's also the most poisonous animal on the face of the earth, and you do not want to eat it. But Willie's helper had eaten it, and it turned him to stone. Now I see, there's a lot of you looking at me like, that is crap. You don't know what you're talking about, and I don't believe a word of it, but I challenge you someday to go up to that strip of wilderness east of New Hampshire and west of Maine. Go down to the edge of the pond, and you'll see a rock right at the edge of the water that looks an awful lot like a man with a bad stomachache. Thank you.